Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. This is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. Who has the information of what's really happening in the real estate business? I may have some, but the guy who's really taken over for me, who's the leader in the industry, is my friend Shimon Shkury, who's a founder and a principal at Ariel Property Advisors. Shimon is like a walking encyclopedia on information of what's happening in the market. So today, Shimon's going to tell us a little bit about the fourth quarter of 2025, his thoughts for 2026, and what transactions are taking place. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you for the nice compliments. Nobody's replacing you. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that I have a 65-person operation at Ariel, 7 partners as well, and all of them are putting the efforts here into this information, which is great. But you're right, 2025 has been a very interesting year. One of the things that investors looked at is the rule of three. They looked for value, they looked for fundamentals, and they looked for places where policy incentivized them to transact. And that's exactly what we saw. We saw that sellers were in many cases forced to sell, but in many cases wanted to stay in, which again adds to the conviction of New York City investment. We saw $35 billion, which is a 24% growth year over year. And the one word that comes to mind is momentum. And I'll tell you why. It's because the second half of the year was a lot more robust. By about
you had some major transactions the second half of the year.
Exactly. You had Paramount, you had 590 Madison. These two together are more than $5 billion. You had 800 Fifth Avenue. You had Waterside a recap. And so you had some major transactions, like you said, in the second half of the year. The food groups, multifamily, office development, were very transactional and interesting. Multifamily was about 25% of all transactions. And as you know, in multifamily, you have the rent-stabilized world, which is challenged. You had affordable housing, which is doing well. And you have free market, which is doing exceptionally well. On the rent-stabilized world, as we all know, we've still suffering with the HSTPA, the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act of 2019. That's the regulation that changed how rents can grow, and they can't grow as much moving forward. So part of the sales that you see, or big part of the sales, are distressed sales. You've seen the start of the Pinnacle portfolio bankruptcy that Flagstar is leading. You've seen Summit buying into that. Which is interesting
because Summit's an Israeli-based company, correct?
Yes, and they've been here before buying rent-stabilized multi. But what's interesting about their buy is the value. The valuation is about 40% compared to what it was pre-2019. And these are public numbers, so you can actually verify them, which is pretty interesting. So you have sellers that have to sell in the rent-stabilized world. You also have sellers that had enough. And so you saw a company like Related just doesn't need to sell, not forced to sell, but made a decision to sell their one of their portfolios in the Bronx to PH Realty at a 24% discount, not 40% discount. So still a discount, but not as heavy. And the reason these buyers are buying is because of the basis, because of that discounted basis, the fact that you can get a relatively high cash-on-cash return day one. And their understanding and our understanding that HSTPA, the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act, is just not sustainable. What's really interesting also is to see another transaction, or the tail end of a transaction that took place, which is the LEFRAC transaction, which started as a rent-stabilized transaction and ended as affordable housing. Got an Article 11. And that's a tool that the city has.
Explain in Article 11.
It's essentially giving an owner the ability to have a tax shelter for a very long period of time, let's say 40 years, but the building has to be affordable housing, has to cater to lower income tenants. In some cases, in most cases, has to also go through a major rehab. There's some cocktail of subsidies and financing that's involved in many cases. So that is a tool that the city and state have if they wanted to convert some of these rent stabilized into affordable housing, which is really a win in many cases for the tenancy, for the city, and allows a mission-driven investor to also have an economic value long-term to sustain that affordability.
How are these programs like the 485X?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and busts. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
And the other programs helping out?
Yeah, that's a great question because that is the development. And you're talking about the 485X, and we'll talk also about the 467M. The 485X replaced the tax abatement to build residential rentals. And what we see, Michael, which is super interesting, is about 247 transactions that are going to be rental developments happening in 2025. That's a 40% increase compared to the year before. But you know what's more interesting is that 95% of these transactions are going to be developed for buildings that have 99 units or under. And that tells a story. The story is that if you want to develop more than 99 units, you have a wage requirement which prevents it from being economically viable. The big deals that traded were with an old 421A. Again, so it shows you how policy incentives provides for transactions and developers to do what they want to do. The other tax abatement, which I think you alluded to, is the 467M, which pertains to office buildings that are converted into residential. And that specific legislation is good and encouraged a lot of conversions in the past 2 years.
What are the benefits that somebody gets for that?
You get a relatively long benefit, more than 30 years, and you got to set aside 25% for affordability. But that comes with the City of Yes and many of the rezonings that allowed it to happen. What was also interesting is that there weren't only transactions, but also existing owners that decided to convert this year, which was super interesting. The office market, if you want to talk about that, was also another category that we found super enticing. The Class A office specifically did exceptionally well.
I mean, especially with 590 Madison Avenue and some of the other in the Paramount portfolio.
That's correct. So RXR, Baupost, and Elliott bought together 590 Madison, which is interesting because it was the pension teachers of Ohio, not a distressed sale. Just a building that was 87% occupied, needed capital improvement. Our assumption is that pension fund decided to recycle that capital, brought in RXR, or sold it to RXR for $1 billion and $1,000 a foot. The goal is to really increase rents over time. Rents in that location in general, about $86 a foot. In the higher end, they go all the way up to $300 a foot for office. And you mentioned the Paramount Rhythm transaction as well. We estimated that at about $3.8 billion for the buildings that were New York City located. There were also recapitalizations in that category in Class A office. 1345 Avenue of the Americas is an example of Fisher Brothers bringing in the Blackstone group. And the B and C class traded too, but to a lot lesser extent. It was $10 billion of transactions in the office market. In the Class A office market, about $1 billion in the Class B and C. What was interesting there is that you finally had a path and so transactions happening as long as the basis was enticing. I believe that buyers there saw an opportunity to rehab these buildings and get them to 50, 60, and 70 bucks a foot, not the Class A, but still saw enough demand and a deep enough bench of tenants to convert.
Let's talk about coffee and cap rates. What's
Yes.
happening with that?
Coffee and Cap Rates is our event that we do twice a year.
Which will take place this week.
It will take place next week,
Right.
next Thursday at 8 o'clock in the morning at the TD Bank location in One Vanderbilt, which is a great location. TD is our sponsor there. We also support Legal Outreach, which is an after-school program. We've been doing this for many years. We welcome people to join us. There's going to be a panel discussion with some great people on it. And I look forward to it. And Michael, if you can come here, come there.
I'm out of town.
You're out of town,
unfortunately. But
So next time. But I think that what you will hear there is part of what we're seeing, which is liquidity is in the market today, both equity and credit, private credit and not private credit only. We will continue to see mortgage maturities affecting transactions. There's about $1 trillion of them, a little less than $1 trillion going through. That's a 20% increase from the last year. And I think you will see more transactions because of these things.
so in conclusion, you see 2026 as a good time.
I believe so, yes. We do see the fundamentals growing. We do see more transactions. Even with the administration, there's some positive notes in addition to everything that we're hearing, especially more construction of housing that we're hopeful for. So I believe 2026 is going to be a transactional year.
I thank you very much for being here and providing so much insight for my listeners. Take care.
Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it.
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and busts. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.